Sokoto governorship elections, the results have since been declared. Then you heard that the All Nigeria People's Party rejected the result even before they were eventually declared. We've been trying to get across to the national chairman and the governorship candidates. Their efforts have not been successful at the moment. They've not responded as they should have. But now we're joined by Kabir Mato, who is a lecturer in the Department of Political Science, University of Abuja. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, we had spoken to you previously on the phone, and you said you had been monitoring these elections for a long time, and then eventually the results came. But how come, in spite of perhaps what you say was going to go the way it did, how do we have those complaints coming through from different political parties?
Well, thank you very much. I think the reasons are numerous. The reasons are numerous because in Nigeria today, the electoral empire, for instance, both at the federal and state levels, have so become, suspicious. People have become so suspicious of whoever conducts election in Nigeria today because of the traces, of unfairness that characterized the conduct of elections in Nigeria, not just between 1999 and date, but perhaps beginning with the MPN days, and even if you want to go back to history, you find that even during colonial period, Nigerians disputed the election results. So it is an integral part of our national political psyche, especially on the part of the political class, not to accept the will of the people. And like I keep saying, I don't really blame politicians for that. I think people have certainly not been able to assert their political integrity in the electoral processes by agreeing, not budging to the aspirations of politicians as to cut corners whenever elections are on. So perhaps that might be the reason that up to this moment a lot of Nigerians, no matter how well credible any election is conducted, you still have people, disputing the figures and the results that will come out of it, except, of course, if you are the beneficiary or you are the winner in that particular election. So this, to me, I think explains what's happening. But I've always had the view also that, sometimes when I said I consulted for the, Justice Owais Electoral Reform Committee, and one of the views that I took was that it is going to be pretty difficult that in a very huge country like Nigeria to have one single entity called Independent National Electoral Commission conduct election on the same day at the same time throughout 120,000 polling stations. You cannot. I mean, the integrity of that process will certainly be questionable. So my proposal, even then, and I'm still standing on it, is that we have to have some attitudinal transformation as the people and agree to do this democracy the way it is supposed to be done. What do I mean by the way it is supposed to be done? We will have to agree that we will do elections without necessarily any policeman holding guns by the side. We will not snatch ballot boxes. We will not succumb to the wishes of desperate politicians to do what is not, in the best interest of the electoral process. So the best election in Nigeria will certainly come when we have some attitudinal transformation on one hand, and secondly also when the state independent electoral commissions are so empowered to do these elections, every state of the federation at the same time, then that is when we are going to have a free, fair, and credible election.
I mean, but in this particular circumstance, I mean, yes, we're used to the results are declared, they dispute the figures. But this one was before the results were even declared, before they were finally collated, and they were already raising objections, saying, no, this is unacceptable.
That's why I told you about the psychology of the Nigerian politician already. The moment people are queuing up, for instance, immediately the first polling station, finishes counting and the results are being released, people begin to raise issues about the integrity of the process. Now, so I'm not surprised really that they will object to the result even before it was released. But one, area of strength that I've always relied on is when these spot elections are conducted by INEC. And we've seen it in history from the Anambra election that brought back Peter Obi to the one in Kogi, Bielsa and the rest. The integrity of the process, rises with the capacity of INEC to do these things when it is not at the national scale. So I really was not in Sokoto, but the events that led to the election, and of course following the election, to several other Nigerians, I'm sure the result was not rather a surprising outcome, and it wasn't even surprising to me and several other people that the ANP, of course it was basically PDP and ANPP, because the third political party scored just a little over 7,000 votes. So it's expected. And if you know the history of politics in Sokoto State, especially from 1999 to date, you will find that the first 8 years were basically the 8 years of ANPP in Sokoto, until certain transformation took place, and then PDP took over the leadership of that state. And then, to be very fair and objective, let me quote what I had one of Nigeria's as broadcasters, Malan Daladibako, said one time, after the Supreme Court removed the governor-elect of Sokoto State, Aliyu Magataka Adawamako, recently. He said in Sokoto State they have not seen yet any popular politician as much as Aliyu Wamako since the demise of the late Shehu Kangio. And Shehu Kangio was the governor of the old Sokoto State that comprised of Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara State today. So I think the electoral process wasn't as flawed as several opposition candidates or opposition party members will want to project it. And one important thing that we really need to take into cognizance as a people is that I spoke so much about this issue of attitude. Democracy is about attitude, the resolution of people to do what is right. For God's sake, I support the Sovereign National Conference, but I know it is not possible, it cannot hold, because what Nigerians are basically talking about is they are talking about the imperfection in the document that we have that is serving as a code of conduct, the grand norms in the Nigerian society. We have seen some democracies in Europe and across the world that run their system without any document that is called the Constitution, but the attitudinal sophistication of these people, the agreement to abide by the norms and conventions and do things the way they are supposed to be done, perhaps is what more than any other thing else informs the government in Britain. And the United States of America, from the time the Article of Federation was drafted and signed by the representatives of the people up to this moment, we have seen the number of times that the Constitution has been amended. So the issue precisely is not about this document that we call the Nigerian Constitution. The issue is about the desire of the Nigerians to do what they are supposed to do, to be fair to one another, to tolerate one another, to love one another, and to try to do democracy on the basis of the tenets of the system of democracy, and not any such thing. So similarly is the case with election. Okay, we have to agree that we will do it right
in Sokoto, and the desire of the Nigerian people to see things done right. There were about over 600 observers were posted to monitor the elections, according to the Project Swift Count group of monitors. Now, one of those that was there is the co-chair of the PS of Project Swift Count, a senior advocate of Nigeria, and they believe all of them, the 627 observers, say that the elections were flawed. That sounds like playing along with what the opposition parties were saying.
Well, you see, the issue of elections having problems or questions on the integrity and the credibility of the process, in my view, is a very delicate thing that is perhaps rooted in our own very political structure. Rooted in the political structure in the sense that a dominant political party in any single environment tends to scare others that are in opposition from freely and willfully doing what they are supposed to do. Perhaps it might just be...
Sorry, how do they do that scaring?
Well, of course, it's that... I told you yesterday when we were talking to you, I was in Sokoto about 2-3 weeks before the election, and I asked myself some questions with the people that were... I said, I have not seen the poster of any other contestant except that of the governor-elect of the state. What's really happening? Is it that these political parties don't seem to exist in the state, or what?
The explanation we got from that when we spoke to Nnamdi Oliver was that when they put up the posters, he says, via intimidation, the opposition parties come and pull them off.
That's the supporters of the
other parties.
But the other thing is that he said sometimes they're not even allowed to put them up.
So that's what we are saying. So it has become a pattern of electoral violence that is manifest in basically every section of Nigerian society. This is precisely what happens. But then that in itself does not isolate or does not remove the very fact that, I don't subscribe to the common thing that so many people say, that you can only rig election in a place where you are popular. That's what we had, especially during the 2011 general elections. People tell you that, even if the election was rigged, you cannot rig election where you are not popular. So if I deploy the same theory on what happened in Sokoto, probably that will explain it. Yes, the Project Swift count might have, questioned the integrity of the electoral process, but I think the officials that were there to monitor the elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission and the rest of them, would actually have used, if the statements were very, very credible, the opinion of these people to at least, question the integrity of the election in one or two local government areas. So I'm not really prepared to join issues with whatever the observers might have said about the, the electoral process. Okay. But on a general count, like I did see, I see INEC as capable of doing better when sports elections are conducted than general elections.
Going with that theory of yours, when you say that INEC does better when it conducts sports elections, that's what one would think should obtain or should be obtainable. But what we've seen so far in the state, in Kogi State, that was not what was obtainable. In Bayelsa State, that was not what was obtainable. And now in Sokoto State, the ANPP was rejecting the results even before they were announced. And then we say that it seems what you're saying is that the opposition parties complain for the sake of complaining. They are opposition parties, and the reason why they will complain is only and simply because they will normally complain, not because there's really anything to complain about.
That is not what I said. That is not what I'm saying.
That's what I said.
No, that's not what I said, and that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying on this matter is that I try to trace the history of this agitation whenever elections are conducted in Nigeria to even colonial period. And up till this moment, I am not saying really that the opposition parties didn't have the capacity. For instance, I participated the Kogi elections, very closely because I was a resource person at the Nigerian Television Authority, and every issue was reported on a minute-by-minute basis. And I found that yes, if true the reports that were received at that material time were anything to go by, then the elections. Let me tell you very, frankly, that there is no how in our own part of the globe that you can have an election that is waterproof, that is absolutely transparent to the extent that everybody will be happy. But that will not also take away that in fact it is a democratic right of expression on the part of people who are contestants in any election, or people who support aspirants in any particular election, to express their dissent where results are released, or on the manner and the conduct of that particular election.
But we have seen cases where, the opposition or the main candidate, the favorite candidate, wins and the opposition concedes. Not because the person totally loves the candidate, but because it's clear for all to see that truly this person won the election. Remember, we had more of these cases. These cases where the fellow contestants congratulated their opponents after the elections, more in the April elections, and we're seeing now on this sports elections. What do you think is responsible for
Hello,
that?
This particular scenario you are talking about was exceptional in the history of Nigeria's election. What has become dominant these days is that we automatically reject results no matter the level of integrity that process has taken. Yes, I share your sentiments that in April we've seen a few cases where candidates came out and congratulated people who won the election, and that is precisely the scenario that we want to see in Nigeria in the coming elections. But you cannot have that unless and until this attitude of a matter of life and death is taken away from the nation's electoral process. This cutthroat competition and the aggression that goes with it in the competition, to get access into political positions in this country. So it's really part of our tradition. And I listened to the president, warning his appointees that he's going to sack them if anybody campaigns for him. I hope the president is talking from the bottom of his heart. We've had that several times ago. Yar'Adua said the same thing. You remember when they came? He warned his aides that they should not campaign for him in 2011 and so on. And so all these are the issues. And of course the nature in which leadership recruitment process takes place within the level of the political party and at the national level itself is very questionable. I love the way the president, admonishes his people or his political party that let there be elections right at the ward level up to the national chairmanship level. I wish that is going to be possible, but we've had that time and again, and then at the end of the day, what we see, we see the politics of consensus. We see people, being selected, because this is very difficult to achieve within the given, the contemporary order that we have, especially, in virtually all the major political parties in this country, because governors, local government chairmen, president, ministers, members of the National Assembly, and the rest of them have also their own political tutelages and followership. And that at any point in time, they will want these people to be relevant at specific stages within the electoral and the political spheres. So it is rather going to be very difficult to achieve that. But you see, that's why I spoke about the need to have an attitudinal transformation in Nigeria if we really would like to get our politics right. That's why in the midst of plenty, we are yet very hungry. We have virtually everything: material resources, human resources, and yet we are among the report of the Bureau of Statistics that was released last week was horrifying, and I in fact question the integrity of it, because it is not enough to say that the 61 or 69% of Nigerians are living below poverty. It's far much more than that.
But let's ask this question: what exactly explains when states, traditionally, people say they're one-party states. For instance, by Elsa, it was said to be a one-party state, and a host of other states said to be one-party state. What does it take for those states that they are almost sure of victory, as it were, because of the certainty that they could almost win these elections, stifle opposition parties? For instance, now, why would, say, the PDP not let the ANPP put up their posters? Why would you want to intimidate them further?
Well, again, you see, the tragedy here boils down to the level of the Nigerian political followership. It may not necessarily be an attribute that you get from the political leadership, but that of political... Look, poverty is a fundamental issue in Nigeria today, and the young people that cannot go to school because the educational infrastructure at every level, especially within the public sector, have collapsed. So these young people have become the youth vanguards of virtually all political parties. Haven't you seen some members of the All Nigeria People's Party in Sokoto protesting even before the results were released? If you take a curious look at the vast majority of those were people who are supposed to be actually in school, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old. But the educational infrastructure has collapsed in this country.
People who are not supposed to be involved in the electoral process.
Fine. But in fact, by the Nigeria's constitution, you have to attain the age of 18 before you can cast your vote, before you even achieve that status of half franchise. But we see that they are the people that are the major voters in virtually all sections of this country today. We also see that they are the people that have become the foot soldiers in the event of any political violence in any section, on every section of this country.
Is that not a flaw on the part of INEC?
Yeah, it is not a flaw on the part of... You see, why I said INEC is unable to do a good election in the 36 states of this country at a go is simply because it lacks the capacity to do it. And in many federal systems like Nigeria that are as large or even not as large as Nigeria, certain devices are created in order to take care of this. But you see, you have an INEC that sits somewhere in Abuja that has to conduct the election in Maiduguri on the same day, and then in Badagry, and then in somewhere in Port Harcourt, and then in Sokoto. It has to rely on forces that are outside of its control. Before, we used to have primary and secondary school teachers and civil servants doing it. Atairu Jega thought otherwise, that the integrity of the process was put to question because of the loyalty of most of those people that are employed. And he has now brought the idea of, introducing corpus, youth corps members into it, university lecturers, professors, and so on and so on. But you see, the tragedy of the whole thing is that whether you are a youth corps or a vice chancellor or a professor in the university, you are all part of the Nigerian system.
Okay, but you see, the issues that have been raised concerning INEC over time, before we're using the teachers and all that, and now we're using coppers, are still coming up again. Issues like late arrival of election materials, accreditation of voters, even after voting had commenced. Now, these are still issues. Is it a question of capacity now?
Yeah, it has to do. It's a lot of it has to do with capacity. Now, Nigeria, of course, a
capacity
lot of
in terms of human resources or material resources.
In terms of human resources. In most cases, INEC, I hope you know that by the amended constitution, derives its source, funds directly from the consolidated revenue funds of the federation. So the president or the accountant general of the federation, or anybody for that matter, will not withhold INEC's resources or funds anymore in order to detect or to determine its pattern of behavior. So it's basically, let me tell you something. I was sharing very closely with one of my friends who is a politician, and he told me that what they observed is that in fact the youth corpus are even easier to deal with than the civil servants and primary school teachers, because according to him they are more organized. So if you want to commit any political havoc in terms of electoral fraud, it is easier to deal with the youth corpus. And we have seen professors on national television missing figures. Returning officers, they went to Abuja and they say, and the chairman of INEC will tell them, go back and reconcile the figures and bring them back. Professors of mathematics, chemistry, and physics. So we are Nigerians. I still insist that the problem with this country is our attitude. You are in government today, there must be unity in this country. You are out of government tomorrow, we must have several national conference and determine whether we want to exist as a people or not. So we have basic, and you see, there is no half measure to this. If we want to correct these situations, we have to correct them holistically. And that is why you will have integrity in the judiciary. Even now, people question the integrity of the nation's judicial processes.
But in spite of all that seems to be going on, the staggered elections, that's what it looks as if it is now, because we've had Bayelsa, we've had Sokoto, we will have Cross River, and these elections, we had Adamawa also. And we expected that, as electorates, it will be better handled by INEC. Because, this is not like the general elections where they'll be spread themselves among. But the fact that we're getting to see a lot more politicians complaining about the capabilities of INEC, as opposed to when we had the general elections where litigation dropped compared to what we had in 2007. Is that still the same theory? Can we predicate that on the fact that we still need to change our attitude, as opposed to looking at, did INEC actually do anything wrong?
Well, I will still insist that these sports elections were conducted better than the general elections. And like I said, and I will continue to say, election, nobody does election for you. The political class, the contestants will always remain desperate. We will want to retain, because in Nigeria the only industry is government. So we want to become representatives at any particular level in order to have the capacity or the opportunity to allocate the nation's scarce resources. So it's a desperation. Now, the politician himself will have to change his attitude. But the fundamental changes are required in the followership. Because it is the people that should set standards for all those who are aspiring or those who are elected to represent them at various levels. And we're not really getting it. We're not really getting it.
Do we understand it? Because, if you say that it's the people who are to set standards and the people look up to leaders who do not seem to get it as well, how can we begin to, get it through people who are, I fear to use the word, not as educated as they should be about what democracy is about in the first instance?
Well, let me disabuse your mind on this issue. Education here does not necessarily mean acquiring doctorate degree in political science or in chemistry. The figures that professors were missing when they were collecting results in Abuja were figures that people selling dollars on Broad Street could easily put together. So it's not about the level of education. The level of people's awareness on democracy is not directly proportional to how much they go to school. The issue here is that I agree with you. I like this position by the late Chief MKO Abiola that the society is like the fish, and that if the head is rotten, the rest of the body cannot be eaten. So the leadership is supposed to provide that pivotal role in the society towards the emancipation of the people from their problems. But in a situation like we face in Nigeria today, where the leadership seem to be inept, a conscientized citizenry, and I think that is one of the fundamental areas that, a lot of the agitations that are going on, those leading the agitation, should have paid more premium on the need to mobilize people to understand what they should do in order to get things right. Things are not working.
This is very important in the sense that, remember the PSC, that's the Police Service Commission, and an observer from there said that, the politicians had better stop trying to influence people with money. And they are distributing money openly. Now it's very covered. You don't even hide it. They don't hide it anymore. Yeah. And it's sad because there is poverty in the land. If people can be swayed with money, how do you begin to say that education should come in? It doesn't depend on what level of education, what degree they have. It's about a conscience.
Yeah. It's about the integrity of the mind.
Exactly, integrity of the mind. But in the midst of poverty, is this possible?
Well, go to Nigeria Republic. I keep saying it. Go and see where discipline has conquered poverty in arid environment, and yet there is law and order. You're driving, and you know where the police are checking. You stop, get out of your vehicle, go and show your particulars, and you let go. That's what's happening. In the midst of poverty, discipline has conquered things, and things are moving right. In our own case, and that is why I am saying that there is a need for governments at various levels to pay premium on the issue of investing the attitudinal transformation of the Nigerian people.
Can the people do it without necessarily waiting for government to come
and that is why I am saying that's why I'm saying that there is a need for people calling for sovereign national conference. All these restive groups across the country should instead redirect their energies on the need to provide the desired leadership to the various peoples of this country, so that we can ask our representatives at various levels on issues of good governance. The strike that followed the removal of subsidy at least was able to show one fundamental fact, that Nigerians now have begun to ask fundamental questions. If you say, look, you're going to withdraw subsidy, we have to buy fuel at the price of 140 naira per litre, and yet in the appropriation estimate before the National Assembly, the feeding allowance, or the monies that will be used for feeding the president, the vice president and their family, banqueting and so on and so forth, will rise from over 500 million naira to over 1 billion naira. It's a fundamental question. It's a genuine question. Yes, it's a proposal, but it was proposed. It's a fundamental question that Nigerians were asking. And these questions that Nigerians asked led, in fact, the president to make certain pronouncements, as cosmetic as they were. So I am saying that we really need to provide the leadership. You see, that's the essence of civil society groups in the country. But then again, the problem is that we have reduced civil society movements in Nigeria to purely elitist associations. They're supposed to be in virtually every community, so that the aspirations and desires of the people are collated and synthesized for onward transmission to those that represent them.
What do you see happening? Because remember when the new INEC chairman came on board, there was that enthusiasm on the part of Nigerians about the elections. Yes, you had a lot of people who were optimistic, and then the elections came. They could easily align. The voter registration list rose. What do you see happening in the future? Do you see maybe somebody coming up tomorrow and Nigerians just change and improve the attitude and saying, well, we have to get things right. Let's look inwards this time.
The sincerity and integrity of the current leadership in INEC is one fundamental reason that has made me to have a lot of reservations on the capacity of INEC to do free, fair, and credible elections across the country.
Really?
Yes.
Why,
because,
why so?
Yeah, because the fact of the matter is that they are seriously constrained in terms of human resources, especially, to be able to cover 120,000 polling stations.
Please, break it down again. The integrity and sincerity of the leadership
of current INEC
is causing you to question
the capacity of the capacity of a single national institution seated in Abuja doing elections in 120,000.
Would it be a question of a change in modus operandi?
Well, we spoke about capacity. Capacity is one issue, and then another thing also is the attitude of both the politician and the followership. But
observing what we've seen in states conducting local government elections, for the ones that do conduct, does it give you any confidence that states will do any better if they were entrusted with conducting elections in their states?
That is again the biggest problem. Like the state police, I'm an advocate of the state police. I mean, the state governments should have their police force. You know why? Because they tell you that they will abuse the freedom of individuals. What is the federal police doing? The president can send police to Bayelsa State and bar the state governor from attending party primaries. What does that mean? So the Nigerian problem is structural. It is also attitudinal. And we have to appreciate, the level of rot and decay that is in this system, and then resolve to come out in full force and address these basic issues. So the same thing, state INEC, state independent electoral commissions, these are institutions of federal democracy. If ever we have a sovereign national conference and we agree we're going to stay together as a people, these are some of the issues that will come. But they will not function as long as we continue to perceive and behave in the manner that we are behaving.
So we all need to just look inwards and have that change.
We don't have any choice, Chamberlain.
Whether or not the leadership wants us to do it across board,
otherwise
Nigerians have to look inwards.
Nigerians must look inward. Our problems are known. It's that of poverty at national level. Yes, I agree that like President Clinton said sometimes, last week in Lagos, that there is also regional disparity in terms of poverty. But poverty is a national calamity. It's a national symbol in Nigeria today. And what that means is that our infrastructure, since I came in, it was the generating set that was working. How much? Over $16 billion. This is a project that is supposed to go into the next edition of Guinness Book of Record as the most expensive project. Look at railway. How many billions on annual basis? And up till now, yes, Patrick Yakoa is moving in Kaduna, Fashola is moving in Lagos, but the integrated Nigerian railway as we used to see it when we were growing up, it's not there. And monies are spent on a daily basis. Look at our roads. The other time I came into the station and we were going out, I remembered when we used to fly Lagos, Kaduna, we would leave Lagos at 5 o'clock and get to Kaduna God knows when, stopping over on the road. It's not possible for you to do it now because the road. So these are the basic issues. These are the basic problems that we have.
So we see a lot of politics in a lot of all of this.
Yeah, it's all about politics. It is the capacity of effective political brickmanship to change the fortunes of the people. Effectively use the economic resources of the people in order to better the lot of the Nigerian society. So I think we need to preach on the need for Nigerians to change their attitude, to love one another.
That reminds me, when they say life, politicians, political scientists say life is politics.
Yeah.
When they say that, I see people quote it and it almost looks as though they want to manipulate it for their own interest. When you say life is politics, does it mean if I can play the politics to my own advantage, that's the way it has to be?
No. You see, again, people who say that there is no morality in politics, that you should support. That's what we always say in this country. But your moral beliefs should be able to dictate your political activities. And that's when you are fair. Life is politics because politics is what determines virtually everything. Why things look at the tremendous resources we have in this country. But the nature of our political brickmanship has made it impossible for us to even have electricity, to have our schools.
So what would you tell the opposition? I mean, that's his complaint right now, that the elections were not free and fair.
No, I think the opposition, it needs to go through the legal process. Let them go to the court to be able to determine, okay, whether the election, I mean, they should be able to prove their points. We have seen cases in this country where elections were overturned as a result of the capacity of those who are complaining to show that these things were not done right.
But Doctor, they will tell you that, even if the elections were conducted 500 times over, we most likely will get the same results.
That will not be a judicial pronouncement. That is a political pronouncement. That certainly wouldn't be a judicial pronouncement. Okay, so I think the opposition has the right to express its dissent.
Oh yeah, that was stipulated in the law. So if they so wish, even though we thought they were going to express themselves on the program, but they've not been able to make it after several attempts.
Well, I'm happy they have not, because I am not representing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes,
so if
to find out why they're complaining, just it.
Well, yes, they of course will continue to complain, because the issue is that when you are aspiring for any political position, the objective as far as the Nigerian mentality is concerned is that you have to get there, and anything short of that is unfair to you.